Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's once again time for Word Balloon Live, the comic book conversation show. John Such is here. The subject today, you see it from the image, Ithacon, the online comic book convention version of Ithacon that's happening Saturday, April 24th. And I'm happy to welcome our people that represent Ithacon from Ithaca College. We have Darlene Overbaugh. Nice to see you, Darlene.
Hi.
Absolutely. Bill Turner, welcome. It's good to see you. Hopefully he can hear us. And Ed Catto.
I'll say hello for both of us. We're so excited for this job. Thanks, buddy.
No, it's my pleasure. Hey, Ed, give us the history of Ithacon, because as you were telling me, it's really one of the oldest comic book conventions.
Absolutely. So Ithacon is the second oldest continuous running Comic-Con. We might have to change that in the pandemic world or something, or put an
It's a fan culture event.
Yeah, and so it was started a little more than 45 years ago by Bill Turner as a comic convention in the town of Ithaca. Started up 5 years after San Diego Comic-Con, and San Diego, had a vision to become big and sprawling and international, and the vision for Ithacon was to kind of keep it local, a little more farm to table type affair, and it stayed that way. So it's this great event, but the cool two amazing things about it. One, I feel like Ithacon punches above its weight. So Ithacon always has this plethora of top-notch guests coming. So it attracts, amazing folks. Maybe we'll get into that. And then number two is Bill and this brilliant professor, Catherine Kittredge, worked a number of years ago to have this symbiotic relationship with Ithacon and Ithaca College. So Ithaca College hosts the show, and we've been teaching a course now for a couple of years where students learn all about pop culture, geek culture, also about running trade shows and conventions, and then they help run Ithacon. So they get that amazing hands-on experience.
Well, we talked a year ago, and unfortunately, Ithacon had to miss a year because it was the first casualty as far as live events of the pandemic, as far as nerd culture goes. Hopefully, we'll get Bill to sign back on, and he'll be able to give us his point of view of this. But I love the fact that the show was so, as you said, that it's really become incorporated now in the curriculum of Ithaca. And I know, talking to you for the last year, Ed, you've had a lot of great guest speakers for the course and stuff. People like from Chris Claremont to our good friend Shelley Bond, I know just spoke to.
Oh, yeah. So Shelley Bond, turns out Shelley Bond, former Vertigo editor, most recently of things like Black Crown and Hey Amateur, fantastic person. Just so happens she was an IC graduate, and she, as a student in the 80s, went to Ithacon. The synergies just are amazing. So it's great stuff. But Ithacon has had, or for the class, we've had some amazing speakers. Ross Ritchie came in, head of Boom. Students loved him. He gave an amazing talk, and we ended up, they wanted to interview him for the Ithacon itself. So we'll go from there. Folks like Zach and Lonnie from your friends at Aftershock came in. They were fantastic. We had Brett Dakin, who wrote that recent Daredevil book, American Daredevil, all about Lev Gleason. Danny Fingeroff, who I know you're going to speak with in an upcoming show. Talk all about Stan Lee.
Yeah, later today. Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun, and it's a great way for students who are really into pop culture to enjoy it, but also for students who aren't. It's an amazing gateway. We'll get students to say, "Oh, I love WandaVision," and then all of a sudden their mind opens up and they see the broader picture.
Well, go ahead.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it, Ed. That not all the students are super pop culture enthusiasts. They may have a fandom, and we've had a wide variety. We've had anime, we've had folks who go for the real niche items, and it's great to see the students light up when they get to discuss what they're interested in, but also to apply it in an educational setting that has real results that they get to really see come to fruition, with the exception of last year's students. We did pull that one off a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, again, weird circumstances, and I'm glad you were all able to regroup and put the event online this year. Bill, can you imagine, again, all of us being, well into our adulthood? I mean, this period now of pop culture awareness with nerd culture.
Yes. Total victory for nerd culture. When we started the convention, I've said many times, the publicity that we got was primarily on the nature of, do you believe that grown men still read comic books? And, so it was sort of, gentle mockery, but that was, if you wanted any publicity, that's what you got. And, somewhere in the last 10 years, things really reversed.
Yeah, I'm reminded of that line in the Rocky Balboa movie when he's in the corner with his son, and he's like, "Hey, nobody's laughing anymore," and it's true. Right. And oh my God, I've spent most of my working career in radio, and as you say, Bill, in the last 10 or even maybe, I would agree with you. Maybe it has only been 10 years, but all of a sudden around the water cooler, they're talking about Game of Thrones.
Right. I'm
getting questions like, okay, I'm watching Flash. Can you explain Professor Zoom to me? And I'm like, I'd be happy to. Sit down. And and especially that depth of knowledge, because certainly Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Wonder Woman, icons for decades, and everybody knows them. But now, my God, what a triumph for Marvel to make Rocket Raccoon and Groot like popular toys. Yes. It's like, it's a treat. And people love it. It's like, are you kidding me? But here we are.
Yeah, I had a professor who's also in the entrepreneur group, Brad Treat, and he's telling me about how great WandaVision is and how I've got to watch it. And I'm like, whoa.
Ed, I still can't. Come on, Ed.
Yeah, I'm there now.
We got to get you to
I'm
time. And
I'm there. My wife loves it. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, I just had Rich Johnston on from Bleeding Cool, and he confessed to me that he's so busy covering the day-to-day stuff, he hasn't seen WandaVision or Winter Soldier yet. We all get, and then, my God, again, there is so much to watch. I'm behind on 2 episodes behind on Falcon and Winter Soldier, And I'm very much behind on Invincible as well on Amazon Prime. Good Lord. How many streamers do you guys all have? Let's go around. Darlene, how many streaming networks
too
are
many?
you on? Exactly.
I mean, and it's interesting because you start seeing, you've got Netflix with its Lucifer category, and it's bringing in, those folks. And then you've got, of course, Disney Plus, up in the game. My husband and I last night watched one of the random Ewok ones, and we were like, why did this get put on here? What? And I started Mystery Science 3000ing it. It was hilarious. I was like, man, I'm on fire. But you've got Arrow and Amazon. Amazon's been really great for accessing Doctor Who and BritBox though if you want the classics. So gotta get them all.
Absolutely.
Pokemon.
Bill, what do you say?
I do Netflix and Disney Plus. I stopped doing Amazon Prime just because of the whole Amazon deal. I've been really trying to spend more of my money locally than just keep ordering from Amazon because it's easy. So
I get it. I totally understand, Bill. Although again, I mean, it is kind of a great, not only obviously the 2-day shipping convenience, but to just as a bonus, get really the arguably the second best streamer out there, and all the content they're doing. And like I said, Invincible's on Amazon. I think The Boys is an exceptional show. We were talking off the air that I had Kurt Pierce on this week. He's got a show in development over at Amazon. I mean, it's, again, I feel it necessary, especially doing what I do now online, which really has become kind of my full-time job. That it's almost, I can justify having 10 streamers, which is insane, but I do it because, again, I want to make sure that I'm watching everything and aware. And then as you know, Darlene, I got the opportunity, to forge a great relationship with Joe Henderson of Lucifer. Yeah. And I mean, that's the great thing is it, like you said, these random shows kind of suck people in, and now they suddenly get exposed to a bigger world, and they do want more, and then they find themselves watching What We Do in the Shadows, a great FX show, another vampire. Well, actually, it's a vampire show rather than a devil show, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the event because I've got, let's see. All right, good. I've got the schedule here. I'm going to share on screen.
Oh, such a good schedule.
Absolutely, man. No, this is going to be great. And, I really think the jewel in the crown, as we've discussed off the air, is the Lost Stan Lee tapes that you're going to present as I see here, noon on Eastern. But even before that, we've got several workshops and things going on. So, yeah, tell me about let's literally go hour through hour and everything. I mean, we got the workshop, Increasing Diverse Representation in Graphic Novels, which I think is terrific. And at the same time, you've got the history of Ithacon.
Yeah, so maybe I'll jump in. That workshop and then our other workshop are going to be run by Catherine Kittredge. She was that woman that I referenced who helped forge the bond with Bill and Ithaca College. Yeah. And she runs this graphic novel advisory board here at Ithaca, which is just phenomenal. And they'll be doing those 2 workshops. So that's some very super thoughtful deep dive into, both those topics. And I think they'll be great.
Excellent. And the history of Ithacon. What was the first year of Ithacon, Bill?
1976.
That's great. Wow. And again, the next hour is the Lost Stan Lee. Well, excuse me. Oh, actually, no. There's more here. So we set it up with kind of like as if we have 2 rooms, right, that you can jump in and out of with a bunch of things. We tried not to counter program too much, but it's pretty cool. Then we have, which you're not really showing on screen, which is fine. We also have this whole gaming platform that'll be going on for most of the day. Sure.
And that last pink column, we tried to replicate the magic of a dealer's room. And that was, that's the idea of, look, buying stuff at a convention is part of the fun. And, that makes it so cool. So there we're going to give half-hour blocks to some of our favorite retailers and artisans and crafters. to kind of go all QVC for half hour. So, those are the four main things, these two panels, and then this dealer's room, and then our very cool gaming area, which is half on Zoom. We use some other platforms too, and that'll be a lot of fun.
And before we talk about the Stan Lee tapes, I noticed that Cereal Box, and I forget they actually just rebranded themselves, but you're going to do an audio drama and Cereal Box panel. And I'll tell you, I'm being a radio guy first and foremost. I love that, especially here in the States, audio drama has been revived because of podcasting, and public radio has seemed to have re-embraced the idea of audio dramas. And man, I'll tell you, these shows are well acted. I mean, in the case of Cereal Box, it's one person narration. And I mean, God, as you all know, Tatiana Malaysi from Orphan Black, recorded the narration for the Cereal Box Orphan Black presentations. So you've got the lead character herself, playing the role again and doing these one person narration audio dramas. But that's terrific. And I don't know of you who's the expert when it comes to the audio drama world.
Oh yeah, well, I'm not the expert, but Cereal Box contributed some content last semester, and we listened to their Black Widow series, and then we analyzed it, and they've been great. And we've kind of see them like as an entrepreneurial startup, some of the changes that they're trying to embrace. So we'll be speaking about that too. The audio drama. I mean, give me a Johnny Dollar episode, with Bob Bailey any day. I'm happy. but the what they're doing, not only the content, but also their changes as they pivot as a startup have been really cool.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that these companies have found a niche and are really becoming legitimate businesses. And God, not only the startups like Cereal Box, but also the big players in broadcasting are all very attuned to what's happening with podcasting and audio drama and interview shows like Word Balloon and other things. And so they're on their own initiatives. And they'll get celebrities to, host shows. I mean, Conan O'Brien certainly is seeing great success with his podcast, and other comedians and other, celebrities. It's great. You get these really interesting interviews that traditional broadcasting just doesn't have a place for. But because you can hit a global audience with a digital product, it's viable and worth pursuing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you listen to Conan's cast?
Oh, absolutely, my God.
Oh yeah, I mean,
it's great.
It's him and Sona, and it's a lot of fun.
Well, and truly, like Ithacon, I mean, it's great to hear peer-to-peer people that are from a business and can really get into subjects that an outsider doesn't think to ask. And I mean, God, growing up with great magazines like Rolling Stone and Musician in particular, God, I would devour those and all the rock interviews and other music formats. So when they talk to people, and you really appreciate. I mean, and of course, before that, God, and now the magazines are escaping me as far as their names, but the great jazz magazines of the 40s through the 70s and 80s and stuff. I mean, that's the thing. You really get these kind of unique conversations that again, an outsider wouldn't think to ask. So,
and I think, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've always been very clear about that Ithacon is this amazing space where people can come and have conversations with real people within the industry.
Yes. Of course, back in the day, it was much harder because when we started out, communication with other fans or pros was by mail, taking a piece of paper and a pen and actually putting a stamp on the envelope and sending it to them. So it was slow, iffy. Fans found each other by sending in letters to the letters pages of the comics. And if you happen to see a letter that, they would say, from Bill Turner, Ithaca, New York. And you say, of course we know I'm in Binghamton. That's somebody nearby me. Maybe I should drop him a note and see if I can, figure out who he is, looking him up in the phone book. And so the conventions were really a place to start getting people together and have face-to-face arguments that you just didn't get to have. And, I laugh and say that in many ways, the arguments haven't changed, but the format of them has changed dramatically. I say you can still go to a convention and get into the same argument about the Flash versus Quicksilver, and it's the standard fan things that have been going on for that whole, since 1975.
Oh, sure.
But it's very different now because you have so much more communication and
no, and that's exactly it. But sometimes it's not about arguments, right? It's about activity. And I think, with Ithacon in particular, it holds a special place. I'm an avid con goer when it is safe to do so. And I've been to New York. I've traveled. I've gone to Germany. I've been to conventions, and Ithacon always, I moved to Ithaca in 2001, and I was amped that there was a small town convention because it's where you connect, like Bill, you were saying.
Yes.
There's local people. We have some really great local talent, not just at the collegiate level, but people come to Ithaca to settle and to have a family and do their thing, their craft here. And it's great to be able to, Roger Stern's one of them.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Who obviously is going to be at Ithacon. Yeah. Ed, show us the posters because I know Roger's main topics is going to be talking about Monica Rambeau, the Captain Marvel of the 80s.
Yeah, these are hot off the presses. And this is that great John Romita artwork from her introduction. Monica Rambeau, who, spoiler alert, the character makes an appearance as an adult in WandaVision, created by Roger Stern here locally. So we'll be, he's been a longtime friend of Ithacon, and it all fits to speak with him for this year's show.
And show us the other poster that Ahoy Comics lent you art.
Yes.
Sure. There we go.
Well, Darlene is talking about local, and in some ways Syracuse is local to Ithaca. So Ahoy Comics is fellows like Hart Seeley and Tom Payer, Frank Camuso, a lot of great fellas who live in nearby Syracuse. Tom has been coming to Ithacon for years and years. So they've been a big supporter of Ithacon, even supplying this artwork from an upcoming issue of Wrong Earth. And we're so thrilled. The students always enjoy speaking with them, and the fans always love speaking with them as well.
That's great, man. No, and I'm a huge fan of Ahoy because, they have so many great experienced people like the list you just put out, but also Stuart Moore and Jamal Igo. And it's just great that they really have brought humor back to comics. And Wrong Earth is a great example of that. For people, and they've been guests here on Word Balloon, but if you don't know about the Wrong Earth, imagine if the Adam West Batman were to come across the Ben Affleck Batman, let's say. Initially they switch Earths, and hence the Wrong Earth. And how would Adam West face, Darkseid and some of the villains that Ben Affleck has had to face in his movies, and then also have a guy like Ben Affleck come and kick the crap out of Frank Gorshin and Cesar Romero and the like, and everything from the '66 show. It's a great series. Great series.
Yeah. All their titles are so just absolutely nuts, and makes it so much fun.
Talented people, man. And again, Aftershock, a ton of talented creators there. And I'm so glad that you're working with those guys. And, of course, they're a sponsor of Word Balloon. And, Ross Ritchie, from day one of creating Boom Studios, I've had the pleasure of having conversations with him over the years and hanging out with Ross. And he's really one of comics' great advocates before he got in the business. And that's why he wanted to get in, to make good comics. And, my God, for the 15-plus years that Boom has been out there, we talk about diversity and inclusion. And I really think Boom in particular has been one of those publishers that have really answered that call and said, hey, you want comics with LGBTQ, characters? We got it for you. That kind of, and opportunities for creators of all races and orientations. It's outstanding.
Yeah, well, we've known Ross for a while, but recently he started doing those videos where he'd give real straight talking advice to folks, and we thought it was fantastic. So we invited him to speak to class, and it was a little bit less of like, as Bill was saying, that time when fans are enjoying something they really love. It was more straight business advice for pop culture, geek culture, entertainment business. And it was fantastic, and that time was made such an impression on the students. So we look to replicate that at the show this year. So it'll be good.
Yeah.
Any Bill? Give me some all-star names that have appeared at Ithacon over the years.
Have appeared.
Yeah.
Joe Simon, Murphy
Wow.
Anderson. I mean, my great regret is that we never were able to have Jack Kirby come, but we have had a lot of big names. Kurt Swan was
Wow.
here a couple of times. The studio, back in the days of the studio,
Yeah, that's
Wrightson.
Barry
Yeah.
Windsor Smith, Mike Kaluta,
Yep.
Jones, and Bernie Wrightson.
Yes. And in different years we were very successful. One of my favorite stories is one year we invited Al Williamson. It was, a big name back in the 1950s, certainly. And he said, no, he was too busy. And then on Sunday, it was a 2-day convention. Sunday morning, we were all having breakfast together before the convention. And Al walks in with his family and sits down at a table and orders breakfast. And fans start coming over to me and say, Bill, is that Al Williamson? And I said, yeah. And they said, well, what is he doing here? He's not advertising. So he apparently just came for breakfast. But no, he came over and said, what stupid reason did I give you for why I couldn't come? So that was a great surprise appearance.
Understood. Well, that's a great thing, man. Ithaca being on the East Coast and obviously
Yes.
part of New York State and everything. And, so it's easier. It was easier back in the day
Right.
when communication was small, but thankfully so much of the community was based close enough to Ithaca that they would, they might be more available and stuff. So that's terrific. And I agree with you, Darlene, in terms of, listen, I love big shows. I love going to San Diego and New York and the like, but it really, the small shows, there's just a great kind of effort,
Yes.
even more so because it usually is fan run and it's so appreciative. The community appreciates it. And, and it's really a great chance to interact with creators even more so than going to San Diego where, God, as Ed knows too, I mean, we're lucky if we see somebody for 5 minutes. It's literally like rocks crashing on the shore coming in on a wave.
Right.
Like, hey, good to see you. Okay, good to see you.
Go. Okay, go.
Yeah, we'll never see each other for the next 5 days, but I'm really glad we had this minute to say hello. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. I want to elaborate on that. That's one of the things people ask me, whether I regret that we didn't grow like a lot of the other conventions did. And I say really no, because we've been able to do what I consider a right-sized convention, which is fans can interact with each other as fans. And also almost all of the pros in comic books are themselves fans.
Yeah.
Or started off as fans. So it's really interesting when you say, we had Jim Shooter a couple of years ago.
Oh,
You say he's a big name guest. He goes to the big international conventions, and it's the standard thing. If there's a huge line to see him, everybody gets 30 seconds. I mean, he's gracious, but when you've got a big line, a 3-hour-long line waiting to see you, there's not much personal interaction. At Ithacon, you can come up and you can talk to him about his work on the Legion of Superheroes. He had a portfolio with a lot of material to show. You could just really interact with the people and have those kind of conversations with some of the big names.
Yeah. It's you can have that fandom conversation,
right?
But you can also delve a little into the professional too.
Sure.
And for our, whether you're very young, or you're at a collegiate level, it's okay. It's accepted. Yep. And I think that's the benefit of what we bring and continue to do.
Yeah. One of our activities I should mention is actually from Ithacon to Pro. And, we have several people who will be chiming in who started in the Comic Book Club of Ithaca or coming to Ithacon and talking with people and who are now in the pro ranks. And, some fairly big names. Yeah. Aaron Cooter is one.
Oh, great.
Sure. Native. Yeah. And Tom Pyre.
Well, and I know Shelley Bond is a Ithaca College alum and everything, and that's why it was great to kind of let Ed know and go, hey man, one of the great Vertigo editors and everything she did, as Ed said earlier, from IDW and Black Label and the like, or Black Crown, pardon me. I'm interested on the academic side of Ithaca. Do the English departments and the art departments, do they embrace comics?
Professor Kittredge is actually from the English department. She recruited me. I am not of the English department. I am of the event studies side of life. But she's really she really engages with the literature aspect. She has, as Ed mentioned, the graphic novel book club, and it's in its academic form, right? It's an art form. I mean, we've all read Understanding Comics and but the approach, the art department, different departments, colleges are compartmentalized and every department contributes in their own separate way. I mean, Ed, would you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. I think they do. I have this dream of getting a live modeling, sketching session with a cosplayer and all the artists around. We've got to make that come
I mean, there's so much potential, right? Yeah. I mean, when you start thinking of a college campus, you're thinking about potential, you're thinking about energy, and you're thinking about learning and opening the minds a little bit, right? So, and sometimes that takes a little bit more time to get people, especially in a medium that has worked its way, as Bill said, from, people still read those. Yes, they do. They do collect, it's a medium that we're starting to see across the country. I think even, we've had conversations with Karen Green at Columbia and Ed Salkowitz out on the West Coast. I mean, there's a real momentum happening. And it's really great to, especially with the School of Communications at Ithaca College. I mean, some of those students actually graduate, move on, and become, working on projects like WandaVision. Two recent, not recent, but two graduates, came back to talk to students about their experiences on that project.
Yeah, in the writers' room.
Yeah. And it's that there's nothing better.
Well, and that's why it's interesting right now, because as you say, colleges are embracing and recognizing the value of graphic novels and comics as storytelling mediums. And it's been interesting because Diana Schutz, I know, and I forget which college she's at, the former Dark Horse editor, has really kind of thrown in her work now purely academically, and has great courses that are legitimate courses examining graphic novels. But I also know, and I won't name names, but a very good friend of mine was teaching a comics writing course at a college. The head of the English department switched, and the new person didn't like comics and didn't think they were valued, and was like, why are we doing this? Explain to me. And, the creator's like, well, you realize that this is one of the more popular English writing courses. The guy didn't care, the department head. So my friend just took his his program and moved it to another,
more receptive institution.
Yeah. It's like, okay, you're lost. All we're doing is, and especially this guy who's not only had success in comics, but even in television and film. And it's like, you're making a big mistake, but good luck with your ideas. And it isn't. I mean, so things have gotten better, but there is still, thankfully, I really do believe that people our age and slightly older are really literally the last generations that might still be like, really? We really going to, spend money and make an academic course about this? But I really do believe that, like I said earlier about Rocky Balboa, nobody's laughing at anymore.
Well, but it comes back to art reflects life, right? And there's some real serious topics that are covered in graphic novel or comic format. And why not take that potential and that energy and use it for dialogue purposes? There's great organizations that even do this at a high school level and work really hard to get it to be that way.
I always anecdotally point out my youngest nephew had trouble reading when he was a kid.
Yes.
And I started giving him comics. And my brother-in-law was a big jock. And at first he's like, they're really more into sports than they are comics. And I'm like, he's actually reading this stuff.
He's actually reading that whole thing.
Like,
he's going to be able to read too.
Yeah, so maybe the nerd stuff, there might be a little room. And seriously, he thought for a second, he's like, you're right. He goes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well,
and I was hate to point that out, and I won't name him, but yeah, it's like, hey man, I'm like, we want kids to read, and reading is so important. Give them something digestible, and like you said, the great thing is now they're hitting tougher subjects, and I know grade school kids that read Mouse, the Art Spiegelman book.
Oh,
that's how they learn about the Holocaust, and
yes,
that's valuable. I mean, that's really, really great.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why major book publishers are starting their own, graphic novel imprints. There's a reason why. But Bill, I remember early days of my attending Ithacon, there was always boxes for kids. Was that a development between the library or the Family Reading Partnership?
It was really something we wanted to do, and we were involved with the Family Reading Partnership early on. But since the very beginning, we've always tried to make it family friendly, inexpensive, so you could bring your whole family without worrying about the cost, and just to have kids' comics available. Because of course they weren't very available when we started out. We were a fairly early comic book store in Ithaca. I was a partner in it when it opened in 1982. But before that, it was all newsstand comics distribution, and new comics for kids just weren't getting out to the stands anymore. That had sort of died away in the late 1960s. So we pretty much were saying, anybody who had extra kids comics, please bring them. We'll have boxes of them out there. We were trying to say they're all a quarter, and all of the money goes to the Family Reading Partnership. That was our most, with literacy program. We had different ones over the years that we supported that way.
Ed knows my good friends, Art and Franco, the guys who created Tiny Titans for DC and have their own, create their own comics line and stuff. And they started 2 stores, one in Harrison, New York, and one here in suburban Chicago in Skokie, Illinois. And I know for specifically the Skokie store, which was their first store, man, the community really embraced the store, and the city fathers really got behind them, and they're like, hey, if you're looking for a great place, because the shame of it is right now is we have so few comic stores or bookstores or record stores, independent places where kids can just hang out.
Yeah.
In a nice place that they can hang out and be kids. And thankfully, the right stores are catering to that kid audience.
Yeah.
And Comics, their company is one of them. What was the name of your store, Bill?
Comics for Collectors. It's still open. My former partner still runs it. So
that's great. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
No, and again, on the one, it's funny, and I don't blame you, Bill. On the one hand, Amazon is driving local businesses away in some ways, but thankfully, with Amazon and Comixology, when you go across the country and you don't have a comic book store, it's an hour or even longer away. It is nice to have that convenience. And I'll even confess that half the books I buy are physical books, and half the books I buy these days are digital. I like the convenience. I love the way they look on tablets.
Sometimes it's also easier to access international comics, like
Absolutely.
the Afro Comics app is phenomenal. There's some really it's a nice opportunity to be able to access that. So there's pros and cons, right?
Yeah.
So
but we're always doing things for kids at the convention. We had 2 students last year who dedicated themselves to making kids activities on theme, on point, and age appropriate. And I miss them greatly, but I think they passed the torch, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We've got some good stuff. I'm sorry, Bill.
No, I still love having the physical comic book. And I don't buy many online comic books. I buy the physical comic book. That's just what I'm used to and what I like.
Sure.
But one thing that has changed dramatically over time is when we opened Comics for Collectors in 1982, we literally carried every comic book being published. And Now that's just crazy. I mean, because at the time it was like 80 comics. So you say,
Right.
well, all right,
Yeah.
every week, you know, you're on a 4-week cycle. Every week there's 20 new ones. We carry them all. It doesn't matter whether they look good or they're amateurish or whatever. We could order a couple of them, you know, and now that would be, you know, you couldn't fit them in the store.
It's impossible. I get it, man.
Right.
Yeah.
But it does
That'd be
mean
an
that with the
amazing
internet
story,
and the online comics that you're not shut out of anything that your local store either doesn't carry or can't carry because of the scale. I mean, in a store, you can't really order one copy of a comic if only one person is interested in it.
Are there, as you guys were saying, there is, I'm assuming, a local comic creating community near the college as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. And that's something that I really love about Chicago stores is we have certainly with really good schools and good art schools and also just self-started kids that are making little, you know, mini comics and things like that. But now again, with the ability to put your comics online, I love the fact that there have been so many successful creators that never had to pitch to DC and Marvel. And in fact, DC and Marvel are coming after them now. And they're like, you know, I have full control over my comic. I can kill characters or make them bigger. I can do whatever I want. I don't have to worry about your grand scheme as far as a publisher. Why would I give that up? And I mean, I really do know a lot of artists and writers are like, I appreciate it, but I'm doing just fine. And it really got, I mean, you know, you mentioned obviously with Ithacon, the University of Chicago had this great humanities weekend in the early 2000s. Oh, yeah. And that's when I first met Will Eisner, and the only time I met Will Eisner.
Oh, wow.
But Eisner and Neil Gaiman and Scott McCloud and Art Spiegelman were among the creators that were there. And it was so great. And the University of Chicago really is kind of an Ivy sort of college kind of atmosphere. And we're in this big lecture hall, and they're on stage just doing their talk, and then afterwards hanging out in the lobby. And it was such a great opportunity just to walk up to Will Eisner. It was years before I did the podcast, but I was just able to like meet him and say, oh my God, your comics have meant so much to me. Could have been cooler. Same with Neil Gaiman. Everybody there was amazing. But again, now we've really got the ability, and I'm sure that in a lot of the seminars that you guys are going to be providing for Ithacon this coming up a week from Saturday, you know, let kids know, hey, start making them now. Don't wait. I always say that about broadcasting. Don't wait for the job opportunity. Make your own stuff, put it online, make the thing that you always wanted to make, and then see what jobs might come up, or you might create something that could be its own thing, and you don't have to worry about getting a job. So
Zach and Lonnie from Aftershock, like the big title they're doing, although they've done a lot of different things at Aftershock, is Undone by Blood. And when they came in to speak to class, it was very much like, hey, we're rolling up our sleeves, we're trying this thing, we're doing that thing. And, you know, the stories are great, and I really do love that book. But, you know, their own stories about how they're trying to do things and, you know, inspiring you as you listen and the students and listeners, you know, that's almost as much fun as talking, you know, about the drama going on in the paper, printed pages. So, we love that part about Ithacon. We also have Steve Ellis, a very gifted artist. He was, you know, Spider-Woman in Marvel, and then went on, and people might know him now, The Only Living Boy and The Only Living Girl. And
David Geller,
right, with David. And he's doing this great art workshop, right? So, like, teach you how to draw monsters, and, you know, what a great interaction that's going to be.
Oh, wow. Interesting question from Dave Resch. Any Rod Serling presentation?
We nailed. So, we spent, was it 2 years ago?
Yeah.
We spent a hard concentration of time on Rod Serling and introducing our students to it. And he was a lecturer at Ithaca College.
Yes.
His 5 Emmys reside in one of the buildings.
Wow.
It's beautiful. And Ed spent a whole bunch of time with some students making a really great display of some of the iconic archival things. You've got something, don't you?
We had Nick Parisi, the author, Nick Parisi of this great Rod Serling bio, come to speak, and we worked with the archivist at IC, where they keep all the Serling stuff pristine, but nobody can see it. So exactly.
Oh,
we
yeah.
had showcases, and we had all these, everything from, his, like you said, his awards to old comics and rare stuff. And that was great. We were celebrating 50 years of 50 years of
it was 50-year celebration.
Right, because 59 or 60 years, because it was 59 was the debut of the Twilight Zone.
Right. You know what it was? It was 50 years, 60 years Twilight Zone, 50 of Night Gallery, I think.
Okay, that makes sense. Sure.
And we had fun. But yeah, Dave, if you like, maybe we should dust that off and focus on Sterling again next time. We love him.
Yeah, also, as Carol has his widow. I don't even know if Carol's still alive.
Yeah.
His daughter too has kind of taken the baton and done a lot of interviews and stuff about her father and that.
Yeah, we invited the daughter, in fact, and she's a supporter of the things we do. And we try and be very respectful. He actually grew up nearby here, and then he retired in this area too.
Yeah. Oh my God, no, and I totally forgot. I'm so glad Dave brought that up, that he was teaching at Ithaca as well. No, he's a fascinating figure, and my God, that public TV documentary about his life is so worth watching. Yeah. It's called for your submitted for your approval, like he Twilight Zone. And
I'll tell you, because of his IC connection, I was able to slip him into one of my more entrepreneurial startup classes. As just this guy was a brilliant writer, but he was also an entrepreneur in many, many ways. And
yes,
a fantastic class.
Well, a lot of television writers were pretty anonymous, and he really was one of the first writer celebrities. And absolutely took that to another level as a pitchman in advertisements and becoming such a well-known figure. No, I'm a massive Serling fan. And again, both Ed, you and Darlene, in terms of what you were teaching about event planning, but also being entrepreneurial. I mean, again, we're this gig economy. Opportunities to create your own business are more important than ever, and just as viable as working for someone. And again, that's kind of my point with the broadcast kids that want radio and television jobs. I'm like, what are you waiting for? There's a digital platform where if you want to do a TV show, you can do it. If you want to do a radio show, you can do it.
Sometimes it's hard to overcome that feeling of somebody's already done it. What am I going to do? Well, you're going to do you. You're going to bring your own flavor to it, and that's good. That and just because someone's done it doesn't mean you can't.
Agree.
And event planning is its own discipline.
Yes,
and that's one of the really nice things. Ithaca College has, I guess, a minor or a program in event planning that people can come and take this class and actually run a real live event, and it's sheltered in a way in that it's not, like it's not going to be a commercial flop. It's been going along. You can't hurt it too much. Well, I mean, realistically, I'm not going to say, well, because I blew something or I did it incorrectly, there's no more Ithacons. So, which is not necessarily true with a big commercial event, because you can say, well, we just went bankrupt.
Right. Or even one of those intellectual properties, like if it was like, if you have to nail that, there's executives breathing down your neck, just like they do for the films. They do it for the events too. And you're right, Bill, this allows people to have a little bit of safety, a little security, but still grow into the understanding of what event studies are and what they can, how they can impact your ability for the future.
And I know Ed stresses in the class that this is a general resume item. Every field has events. And, like this year, we're online. Everybody's online. The skills you are learning here are generally applicable. Not, it's not a comic book convention skill. It's event planning.
Right.
There's certain things that need to be done. And there's the same for whether it's a computer event or a comic book event or an insurance company event or whatever.
We teach like, how to generate publicity, how to write a press release, how to analyze things afterwards. So much is working in a team and dealing with professionals. You're dealing with the CEO of Boom Studios. How do you speak with them, appropriately to prepare him for what you're doing and follow up appropriately. And that's all super important.
My sister will never, ever watch a nerd show or pick up a comic book, but she is an event planner for a pharmaceutical company.
Okay.
And I have been, in this last year of COVID, I've helped prepare several online conventions, including Baltimore's Comic-Con. I helped book it and run it and moderated panels, but did a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. So no, you're right about that. And also, as Bill, as you said, the ability to fail without consequences, because back in my college years, when I was program directing our radio station, we had a morning show that did an inappropriate joke and took it too far. And I'm like, you guys are fired. You're not going to get your radio show anymore. And the faculty advisor is like, John, I understand. And you're right. In the regular business world, they would be fired. But this is college. We learn from our mistakes. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay. And I'm so glad the teacher did it. And I swear to God, this is true. Those two guys went on to become the morning kings of the Quad Cities. And still to this day, 35 years later, massively popular as a rock and roll morning show. And they're like, yeah, you're the guy that fired us. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm like the Beatles. I'm like the executive at Decca Records. It said, no, we don't want the Beatles. Guitars are on the way.
You just provided them with a very valuable learning experience.
Exactly.
Yeah. I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It truly is. Or even the great comedians will say, there are no clubs where you can fail. I mean, you really have to kind of know your comedy. And it's true. And I mean, even like the old timers that had vaudeville, they're like, hey, we were lousy for 10 years before we really know what the hell we were doing. That's a great thing about having programs like this in colleges where it is a laboratory and you do get to experiment. And fine, it didn't work. But like Bill said, it's like, you're not going to hurt the event. It's okay. And you're going to learn from your mistakes, which we really do. We learn from our errors much more than our success.
And sometimes they're happy mistakes. Sorry, Jack.
Absolutely.
Sometimes they're happy mistakes. They're things that we didn't think of. And it's like, oh, well, look at that.
Right. And, sometimes even like the students, you can see they bring things to the party that we didn't realize. Like there's a fella named Clay who's one of the leaders of the cereal box, and he loves being a college DJ. So that fits, and he's bringing this whole DJ. We have some students, 4 students who are great at social media, and the things they're doing for especially on Twitter and Instagram are absolutely beautiful and brilliant. And it's nice to see, them bringing like some current creativity. We try and help them understand the objectives we're trying to achieve and make it measurable and do things in a professional way. And, all together blossoms into this beautiful thing.
Well, I mentioned in the title that you've got the Lost Stan Lee tapes, and we haven't had a chance to really go into detail about that. Bill, tell us about this particular panel. It's going to be noon on Saturday. But and the great thing is, everybody, if you do miss the live event, it will live online. And I would imagine everyone will be able to access these panels if they go to your website. And are you using YouTube? I know you're doing them. I'm assuming you're doing them as Zooms. But are they just going to live on the website, or are they going to live on YouTube? Where are they going to live?
Yeah, right now we're going to have them live on the website. And we the nice thing about Ithacon is there's these amazing, things that happen. Where John Byrne is kidding around with Marv Wolfman in 1980, and they're ephemeral. This one will live, forever. So we want to make sure that people can enjoy it.
I understand. But yeah, Bill, tell me about this lecture that Stan Lee did that your alums were able to find.
Well, it was actually just odd because this predated the comic book club. Actually, it was just after the formation of the comic book club, but predated Ithacon. And I really don't know the details of who at Ithaca College arranged the lecture, but Stan Lee had just begun doing the sort of the college circuit in those days. And it was a big time in comics. The day, I believe it was the day before that lecture that Jack Kirby's return to Marvel was announced.
Wow.
So, and that was Kirby himself announced it. So,
so is that reflected? It
was a big time in comics. And so it was just fortuitous for us that several of the club members went, and one of the guys, I should say kid at the time, he was in high school, went and recorded the lecture. So
I understand. I was doing that before I started podcasting, especially the how to write and create panels. I was doing that at like the Wizard Chicago show. And it's great because in subsequent years, those panelists and stuff have become not only frequent guests at Word Balloon, but also friends. And it's like, guess what I still have? And I'd pull out a panel they did in like 2004 or 2005 before I started the podcast and stuff. And they're thrilled to hear them and stuff. God, and I even remember Bendis and Ed Brubaker were flirting with the idea of a Batman Daredevil crossover. And they wanted to kind of start the buzz at the convention. And Bob Wayne, who was at DC at the time, is like, well, you're certainly not going to be able to do it without our approval. And I mean, it gets this crazy live moment of Brian getting rattled by Bob Wayne going, not if we have something to say about it. And it was great. It was fantastic. And it's great now because, again, 15 years later, everybody's friends. Bendis is at DC now. It's not a big deal. God, Ed's out of the big two now. But it was so funny to be there and recording this. And again, as a fan, I'm just like, I can't believe I'm watching this happen. It's amazing. So yeah, no, you're right. And that is the beauty of the spontaneous live events. And you never know what's going to happen at a con. So I hope there are positive things like that happen at Ithacon coming up on the 24th. That's
well, one more thing about that Stan Lee tape too, John, is that Stan's kind of a funny figure. So comic nerds, know everything about Stan, Mrs. Lion and his cubs, everything. Whereas so many people know him as like that Walt Disney type character with the cameos. Yeah. And they love him. And then with all these bios that have come out, like the John Morrow book, Danny's book, the Abraham Reisman book, people are kind of, analyzing and fighting. Oh, is he a sinner? Was he a saint? We actually assigned the Danny Fingeroff book to the class. So that was one of the textbooks. And,
that's cool. Yeah.
It makes it so looking back at that period in time, you can kind of understand like, okay, this is what he was doing. This is what he's all about. And then hear it, come live. And he's such a, entertaining guy, that showmanship. Makes it really fun. And we're going to have Danny Fingeroff actually help us analyze the tape that now the whole nation has just heard. So it'll be very cool.
That's terrific, man. No, I'm really, I am looking forward to that event in particular. It is one of the reasons why in about an hour from now, there's going to be another Word Balloon Live where I'm talking to Danny. And I'm going to talk about the Stan book and
great.
Thought of that period of Stan in the 70s when he was doing the lectures and everything. God, I'm so glad that one of your alums was able to, give you guys the tape, digitize it, make it available now. Because as I was saying to you guys off the air, that pre-1990s period of the 20th century, that's the last place where, even though there is recorded history, there are gaps, and sometimes the legend is more famous than the reality. Right. And it's an interesting area to explore because so much did happen in the 20th century. Obviously, as every century prior to the next one sets up what happens in the following century. And truly, I mean, we're really reaping the benefits here in the 21st century of so much that was created and performed in the 20th century. And again, as someone that was born in 1964, it fascinates me to kind of explore what came before and where we are now. And that's one of the reasons why I do Word Balloon. And I'm constantly looking for video and audio of this stuff to kind of explore that period. Because, yeah, like I said, a lot of times, God, a great example of that is Vinnie Coletta, the inker, who is both famous and notorious for everything he did and didn't do. And it's like, I really like talking to the people that actually knew him because there are too many podcasts out there that are, Vinnie Coletta was horrible. He erased so much Kirby art just to get the job done. And then you get other guys like, yeah, Vinnie Coletta was also the art director that told DC leave Steve Englehart and now I'm blanking on the artist, Marshall Rogers, when they were doing that incredible Batman story with the Joker known as The Laughing Fish. Yeah, and they were getting behind on the schedule. And it's like, hey, enough. Let's put, other guys on Batman and let's just stop this story. And Vinny defended them and like, you can't do it. It's too good of a story. Let these guys finish their story. Let them work. And hey, there's a nice thing that Vinnie Coletta did. So
no one person, none of us are one single thing.
Absolutely. And Stan is a great example.
A single person is one single thing. And we are nuanced. And I think that's really great. It's a really great point, John.
And nuance is being lost in this black and white cultural world that we're in the midst of. And it's really important. And I'm glad that, there are academics out there that are like, it's a more complicated story. Let's really examine it. So that's the ambition of what I try to do. And I'm sure what you guys try to do as well at Ithaca. So
I have to say, John, as you're searching for video footage of the past, we are searching for cosplayers of the present to participate in the cosplay runway. We don't do a competition. We believe in the celebration of cosplay. And the students and I have come up with this cosplay runway. And because we're all home, we're all where we are, this is a great opportunity to use that cosplay in the real world. So we're asking people to participate. This is a great way of, making the digital a reality for you. If you go to the Ithacon website, you'll be able to click on a link that will get you to be able to submit your cosplay in real life. So, think about the Kingpin or, in a board executive room or, really taking.
Oh, that's great. Sure.
Yeah. Taking those concepts of these characters, these archetypes, and putting them, Spider-Man on a street lamp, I'm not that flexible, but that's great. Some people are.
I thought it was going to be
we see a lot. I think cosplayers, we're all dying to be able to go back to a convention, right?
I thought you were asking people to be in Starbucks in line and there's the Green Goblin waiting for his latte.
Hey, you know what? I'm down with that. As long as Green Goblin's wearing a mask,
I think that's a great
it's fine.
I think honestly, no, that's terrific. That's really, really great.
So it's video or photography. So it's a good opportunity.
That's Hillary Barta, the great creator, chiming in.
Oh, wow.
Admitting my skeletons in my my Hillary Barta expose awaits. So don't even Hillary. That's all right. He's a great guy. So there you go. Oh, okay. You gave me a link here. I'm assuming this is.
That's the submission.
That's the submission link.
Okay, I'm going to put that in the comments section, everybody. So if you want to submit some cosplay stuff, there it is. There.
We'd love to see Hillary Barta's cosplay. That would be something great.
Hey, we could have. Oh man. We could just have creators cosplay. That would just, that's a whole other episode.
I always say Hillary could probably cosplay, and I wouldn't want him to get himself in the loincloth, but like the Warlord, I always felt facially, Hillary has that Travis Morgan kind of the Warlord hat and stuff. So that comes to mind. So there, let me embarrass you that way, Hillary.
There's something else that has changed really dramatically over the years. The first several years, maybe even the first 8 years that we ran Ithacon, there weren't cosplayers other than the handful of us who were already committed to running the convention. So we encourage everybody who was working at the convention to come in costume, but it was sort of pointless because other than that, there was no cosplay community going on. And now everybody understands what cosplay is. And if San Diego Comic-Con is many things, or Comic-Con International, is many things, but what it is really known by the public, is cosplay. Yep. And when you go and look for it, that's what you mostly see about it. You don't see, here was the schedule of events, here was the panel discussions. You see a whole bunch of pictures of people in costume. And that's good. I like that, but it was my own embarrassing cosplay story was, I believe it was at Ithacon 5. We were in costume, of course. The people running the convention were in a costume. I was Arcade. So if you know what Arcade looks like, the white suit, the hair painted bright red, and all of that. The person who was supposed to pick up the guests at the airport and bring them to the convention bailed. So at the last minute, I had to jump in the car and run up to the airport to pick up Joe Duffy and Walt Simonson.
Oh, that's great.
Right. And Joe Duffy in particular said, I came down the runway and looked at you and thought maybe I should just go back and get back on that plane and go home.
Oh, no.
That got some strange looks because, of course, Arcade was not a costume, that anybody who wasn't a serious comic book fan would even recognize.
I can
Wow, that guy's really weird. He's got this white suit and this big polka dot tie, and he's painted his hair red. So.
Yeah, but these days, people love to see the niche.
Right.
You know, they're like, oh, I remember when was it oh gosh, I blanked.
Character?
No, the Neil Gaiman miniseries with David Tennant and
Better Omens or something Omens.
Good Omens.
Good
Jeez,
Omens.
why did I blank?
Yes.
Anyway, when Good Omens came out, it was like the next con I went to, I would see them. I would see the cosplay.
Yes.
And you have, it's kind of a deep cut, right? I mean, until it was, of course the book, is
Sure.
Right.
But you're right.
beautiful piece between Neil and Terry. But
well, I loved when Agent Carter was on ABC, and it
Yes.
it barely survived the 2 seasons. And you'd go to conventions, and there were dozens of Agent Carters.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I agree with you. No, cosplay is amazing, and I'm really glad that you found a way to do it online.
But personally, I relate that back to the safe space thing again that we've mentioned many times. Is in 1975 through 1980, nobody would go to things in costume. You certainly wouldn't walk around the street on your way to a comic book convention in costume. That was just asking for it. And now, I said, if you look at the convention pictures, the streets are full of people in costume doing poses of their giant displays with all the different people. And they meet people who are a character that in some way will play off of their character, and they set up tableaus. And right.
I'm a cosplay photographer too. And it's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite things to see people, I'll catch them in their moments of, they're just chilling out, but it's real, and you're right, Bill, that you would not see that. Now it's commonplace in a good way. I hope.
I think it is
that we're
in a good
addressing
way.
Issues of cosplay not being consent, and and we've like you said, safe space.
Agreed, but here in suburban Chicago, there's a subway stop right before the convention center in Rosemont, and you see people going from the train station walking towards the convention, and it's the entire Marvel universe and DC universe, and now even other like you mentioned, Good Omens and stuff. Different other things, and they're just constantly walking, or even things have gotten so big. The anime convention is its own thing.
Yes.
So, there's the regular Comic-Con, and then in the spring, there's Anime Central. In fact, it is normally around this time of year. I don't know if they're doing it online or not. But I'm glad you guys are doing Ithacon online, and it's going to be great. Again, everybody, it's Saturday, April 24th. Last thoughts, everybody, before we wrap up?
There's
a WandaVision panel. There's, there's. I
saw Pulp, crime fiction.
Yeah, right. We have a pulp crime fiction with folks like J.C. Vaughn and Alex Segura on it, and we also have some great films, like that old tradition of showing films at night. So this amazing film called Monster Force Zero, an award-winning kind of fan film is probably an incorrect term, but it's all about cosplayers going to convention, and then they get superpowers and have to save the world, right?
Oh, that's fun. And I noticed too, Larry Marston is going to at least talk about, or if not show, the Amazing Superheroes documentary.
Absolutely, yeah. We've dragged Larry Maslon on, and he's going to be showing a chunk of that Superheroes PBS. Also, it was a book documentary. We just love it, and that'll be good.
Thank God they made that because truly they got Joe Simon and so many great creators before they passed.
Right? Yeah, right before Joe. Yeah, Joe Kubert, all those guys.
Adam West reading the original Batman narration from Detective 27.
I will become a bat.
Yes. Oh my God. Man. And Ed, you connected me with those guys, and they came on Word Balloon. Larry,
remember that? Yeah.
Absolutely.
What's funny? Like that came out 6 or 7 years ago, and now some of these young fans, Larry came in to speak to our class.
Yeah.
2 years ago, I think it was.
Yeah.
He did a fantastic job, but they were like, what is this? Why haven't I heard of this great thing? And we hope to have that again at the show on the 24th.
Understood. No, it's a great documentary, and again, it really, I mean, it was 6 hours, which is so great because I mean, I've become a bit of a snob when it comes to comic book documentaries, where it's like, you can't just make them the way they made them for decades. You really have to do something exceptional for me to take notice. And now, God, they are getting incredibly inventive. Or you had Kirkman's Secret History of Comics that he ran on AMC and really got into some really interesting personal stories about various comic creators. So no, that's great. And then again, truly, it's going to be great to hear the Lost Stan Lee tapes and put it in context of the man and what he was doing at that moment. So that's really one of the great highlights. The link there at the bottom is where you can find the Ithacon schedule. Ithacon.org is the general front door of everything.
And that page will, when the event starts, that page will all become live links.
Sounds good, man.
So go to ithacon.org and you will find everything you need.
Yep. Terrific, guys. Seriously, best of luck a week from Saturday on the 24th, Ithacon online. Happy to help you guys get the word out there for this.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
You guys, honestly, I appreciate the time. And truly, Ed, you've been great in terms of feeding me various guest lecturers at Ithaca College to put on Word Balloon. So thank you. And great to getting to know all three of you. So thank you.
Yeah, well, I got to go commute home and listen to Word Balloon on my drive now, John. So, yeah.
Well, there you go. You got about just under 45 or just over 45 minutes, and I'll be talking to Danny Fingeroff later this afternoon here on the Word Balloon YouTube channel and on Facebook and Twitter. And the audio of this conversation and the conversation with Danny will be posted over the weekend. So thank you very much, guys. And thank you, everybody, for watching. And thank you, Hillary, for making fun of me. I appreciate that. But we'll see you guys in about 45 minutes.